if we're gonna do the look ahead, let's you're pretty good with these the lower level, the LFA and the Contender series. You got your finger on the pulse with these guys better than I do. So you help me out with this. We got Contender series week 2, the 5th season. Week 1 was awesome. Historical week. We saw 5 contracts with 4 fights. And, we're probably honestly going to see much of the same going forward. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple of those this season where a losing fighter ends up getting a contract. But, yeah, Mario Sosa, middleweight bout. Mario Sosa against Chidi Njokuani. So Sosa comes in minus 110 betting favorite. He opened as like a minus 170, and the steam has come in now on Chidi Njokuani, the former Bellator mainstay. Souza, 24 years old. Njokuani, 34. Souza an inch shorter in height and about the same in reach. Njokuani, 6'3", 80-inch reach. Souza already had a Dana White Contender Series appearance last year, picked up a decision victory in that fight as an underdog, didn't get the contract, but he's back here against the veteran Njokuani. You look at Njokuani, 5-3 in his last 8, going back to his Bellator days, had a long layoff between stints in Bellator and then came back with a win in the LFA about a year ago. 5 of his last 8 fights have gone the distance. The guy has a tendency to get gassed early in fights, though. The fights get away from him at times, too. I think he's tough. He's a tough out, but I think he's also in. I think he's might be in over his head, and I don't agree with the line movement here. What do you think about this fight?
Yeah, I agree with you. So to do a non-technical breakdown here, I mean, let's think about it. Who does Dana want? And Njokuani is he's what you said he was 34?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I have seen like 32, 33, so we'll say he's 34. So we got this 34-year-old bouncing around Bellator. It was just an LFA fighting Christian Torres, I want to say. That's like, I mean, that guy's like 15-10 or whatever coming into that fight. Or here's option B for Dana. 26-year-old Mario Sousa, 12-1, just got a win on Contender Series last year. Not the most convincing win ever, but he got it done, so Dana's going to give him a second chance here. Sousa's a great striker, so is Njokuani. They both have good kickboxing. They're both big guys. Sousa's going to have that youth advantage. I believe he's going to have that grappling advantage on the mat. Chidi obviously has some great names on his resume that he's fought. Andre Koreshkov, John Salter, Rafael Carvalho, actually beat Alan Jouban back in 2011, beat Max Griffin in 2015. But Mario Sousa is really coming into his own. I don't think that Chidi is better now than he was in his heyday a few years ago. And I just expect Sousa to have improved. So like I said, haven't done like a deep dive yet, but definitely kind of thought the line should be more around where it opened as opposed to where it was now. I was actually looking at this line before we came on the show, and like minus 110 on Betway, I think. I don't know. That's worth a look for sure. Even if you're not super high on Mario Sousa, I think that's a good look.
Yeah, I don't know what people are seeing. I don't know what people are seeing because what, this guy was on Bellator and now he's fighting a step down in competition. Like, Sousa is a very skilled dude and like probably the better fighter in this matchup. I think, like you said, Njokuani definitely, the chances that he's regressed are a lot higher, as opposed to, especially with the long layoff. And I think he fought in that LFA fight. He won the fight rather quickly. I think it was like early in the second round.
Yeah,
but this is definitely like a squash spot. They want Mario Sousa here.
Oh yeah,
big time. Then they're like, where can we get a guy that we wouldn't be? Yeah, if Chidi Njokuani would have to win this, like he'd have to take Sousa's head off to get a contract. If he wins this fight, even if he wins this fight by like a guillotine or something, like they're not giving him a contract. They're not touching this guy with a 10-foot pole. this is a squash spot so they can be like, look, one of our Contender Series guy beat a freaking Bellator guy. Like, that's basically what this is. And I might eat my words because it seems like the market is coming in pretty heavy on Nujaqwani, but I feel like that's just like, I don't know, is that just like the vet, like people are betting on the more experienced fighter, or people are just betting on the name? But you would have to know MMA to even know who this guy is. So I don't know what they're seeing. What do you think about like why would there be money coming in on Nujaqwani in this spot?
Well, I mean, I think it a lot to do with just the resume that he's fought. I mean, if you're just going to wiki cap this fight and you go and look at Njokuani's page, I mean, Andre Koreshkov, John Salter. I mean, he's not winning these fights, but go back a little further, beat Max Griffin. Go back a little further, beat Alan Jobin. So I feel like people are kind of expecting him to be a fighter that he was when he was in his mid-20s, because you're looking
Yeah.
at these results from back then, and that's just not the case. And I mean, Mario Sousa is going to be a tough test, man. I mean, Sousa's definitely not proven, so I feel like that plays into it a bit. I mean, he doesn't have that big name on his resume, but I don't know, man. 12-1 coming in here, coming into his prime. I think this is, and I mean, yeah, like Dana doesn't want some guy that bounced around Bellator and picked up a bunch of losses to some of their better guys being in the UFC. I mean, I don't think he wants to give any validation or legitimacy to these rival organizations. I really feel like Souza is the guy that they want to be in the UFC, and that doesn't always, come to fruition. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I do think that he's, the side in this one, especially at -110. I mean,
I feel like the only reason that they've even touched cheating Nujaqwani in this spot is because I believe his brother was in the UFC. His older brother was in the UFC at one point, so they're kind of just like throwing him a bone here. But honestly, yeah, they don't want to give legitimacy to these rival organizations. You're exactly right. But what they do want to do is they want to have their Contender Series fighters that are 10 years younger than them bury them. And I'm going to bet on the side of where the UFC is looking here. And I think Mario Souza, in my opinion, might be my favorite play on this card. Yeah. Next fight. This one doesn't even have odds yet. Very short notice fight. Simon Oliveira taking on Jose Alde. I don't know anything about this fight. Do you? I don't see any odds for it. Tapology doesn't even have it listed on the card yet, but it's happening. I just don't have any odds. I don't really know much about these two fighters. One of the, of the 5 fights, this is the one I kind of did the least kind of digging on. Do you have any reads on this one?
I not really anything big, because obviously, like you said, there's no odds. I haven't looked into it that much. I can tell you, like, from what I know, Jose Alde is like decent. I mean, he spends a lot of time on Combache. He beat, I believe, John Castaneda back in the day. I think he has a win. He split two outings against Gustavo Lopez. I think he won a split decision the first time, and I'm pretty sure he got finished in the next one. So I mean, he's decent. And then on the other side, Oliveira, I actually watched some tape on him not that long ago when I was capping for this one of the LFA Brazil events, because he had fought Ari Farias a little while ago, who I had money on. He got knocked out, dropped like a dead fish, like a couple seconds into the fight. But yeah, I mean, he has some good experience. He's a lot of experience on just a variety of different regional promotions. And he's coming in here with a really good record. That fight against Farias was on ACB. I think, just off the top of my head, I'm probably going to lean towards Oliveira here. He's an aggressive fighter. I mean, he has a lot of skills standing, and he has some skills on the ground as well. So that's probably where I would lean here. But I mean, I don't really have a good grip on this one at this point.
Where do you think this fight will be lined? Because Alde is coming in on like 6 days notice?
Yeah, I think that Oliveira is going to be a moderate favorite here, I would say.
Yeah, I feel like if there's any I definitely lean Oliveira here. But I don't want there to, like, if that short notice factor is factored in too much, I feel like there could be some value on Alde. But as far as just skill goes and who probably wins the fight more times than not, it's probably Simon Oliveira. All right. Next one, flyweight bout, Bruno Correa taking on CJ Vergara. All right, so I don't really know a whole lot about either of these guys. Bruno Correa, 12-3-1. Not a whole lot of high-level experience, I'll say, mostly on the Brazilian and South American regional scene. Carlos Vergara, 8-2-1 as a pro. I think his most impressive win is probably his most recent one against Jacob Silva in Fury FC earlier this year. That's my opinion as far as fighting at a high level goes. So, Bruno Correa comes in as a minus 165 favorite with Vergara minus 160 underdog. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting matchup. So Correa obviously was in the UFC for one fight way back in the day after the Ultimate Fighter Brazil fought Mateus Nicolau. Obviously, he lost that one, and then we didn't see him again until now. And I mean, he's fighting decent enough competition in Brazil. I mean, Future FC is a decent promotion. Tara is pretty decent. Vergara isn't really fighting anyone that, I mean, there's Silva, like you said, but he isn't really fighting anyone that's making me think that he's had a more rigorous strength of schedule. He has a nice win on Fury FC. I'll give him that. His combined opponents' records over that streak are, I believe, 16-13. So not really, I mean, not to say that Korea is fighting amazing guys, but I do think that he's fighting better opposition. Vergara is, physically strong. He's a good athlete. Looks like he could probably pose some problems early. But I just think that Korea is a better fighter than him. And the UFC right now, like, they're really trying to push and fill out this flyweight division. And I think that Korea is kind of the guy that they have their eye on. That's why in that we saw both Altamirano and Candelario get contracts in the last Dana White's Contender Series event. And I honestly wasn't surprised, just because I feel like they just want guys to fight at 125 pounds in the UFC right now.
Yeah.
So I thought if any of those fights were going to result in two people coming in, I thought that was going to be the one. Also, they're both, were pretty highly touted flyweight prospects. But yeah, I just think that Korea is a better fighter than Vergara. He's going to have some physical disadvantages here in terms of size, but I think that he's just a better fighter straight up. So that's my read on this one.
Yeah. Yeah, flyweight is just a tough division to handicap, especially in the lower divisions. I went back and looked, there was 14 fights in the history of Dana White Contender Series at flyweight. The underdog has won 7 of them and has turned a profit of 8.6 units on every underdog at flyweight on Dana White's Contender Series going back to 2017. So there's a bit of variance in this division that I figured out. But honestly, I went back and looked, and there's a bit of variance in almost every division. My initial gut call on the favorite wins almost 9 times out of 10 was definitely incorrect, because based on the research that I did, a lot of these fights are still up for grabs. It's just that when the underdog wins, they just don't end up getting a contract. That's just the way that it ends up going. So, I feel like it's a closer fight than what the odds indicate, but I don't disagree with you. I just feel like, I feel like there might, I don't know. I don't like, who do you think that for this one, just as an exercise, who do you think that the UFC wants in this one? Probably Bruno Correa, right?
Yeah, I really believe that he's the guy that they want in the UFC.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, next one. This one is super interesting. Another Canadian. I guess it's the only Canadian, but yeah, another Canadian appearing in Vegas this week. So this one, I need some help with maybe I got some Canadian bias here, but Muin Gafarov taking on Chad and Hellinger. Gafarov coming in, Tajikistan, like his countryman, PFL finalist Loic Radzhabov. He's fought pretty high level, won championship, UAE Warriors. This guy's definitely not a low-level MMA fighter, especially for the Contender Series, at least not in my opinion. And then, 17-3, Gafarov, he's taking on Ann Hellinger, who's 10-5, coming out of the Canadian regional seeds, Rise FC bantamweight champion, but he hasn't fought in almost 2 years. hasn't been able to get any fights since the start of the pandemic. He comes in as a plus 200 underdog here against Gafarov, who's, far more experienced fighter. He's fought far more high-level competition. I think this probably, this is the main event, I believe, right? It's got to be.
I'm not
I think
sure.
this is the last fight on the card.
I think
but yeah,
that Darian Weeks and Josh Quinlan is the main event, actually.
that's
what on Tapology. That's what they have. So I'm not sure.
That would make sense. But I feel like as far as this dude is fighting, like this dude is not. He's a well-known fighter in different parts of the world. So it's an interesting fight. What do you think about this one?
So this is the fight that I have done the most research on, and I made a play on this one. I have 5 units on my guy Muin Gafurov here. And I'll start with Dan Hellinger. I'm going to give him his due. So he comes in 10-5. He has won 8 straight currently. So that record kind of reminds me of like Bruno Capeluzzo on PFL. He has 5 losses. They're way back in the day, and since then, he's knocked out everybody that he's come into the cage with. So Ann Hellinger finishes Brady Houston in 2019. That was his most recent fight. Has heavy hands, KOs a lot of guys, 90% finish rate, 9 out of the 10 wins. Came inside the distance. Every single one of his 5 losses was by submission. So I don't want to write him off because he's explosive. He's a good athlete. He has some skills too. He hasn't lost since 2014. I'll give him some credit. Champion in Rise FC. But we have a 34-year-old from the Canadian regional scene coming off a 2-year layoff, fighting a 26-year-old Extreme Couture product in Vegas with a ton of experience and a Sambo World Championship. I think that this is a really dangerous fight for Ann Hellinger since he struggled with grappling in the past. And to talk about Gafurov, 17-3, Extreme Couture, like I mentioned, bit of a size advantage here. Moved to 145 pounds to fight Leandro Issa, scored a round 1 knockout, just absolutely smoked him with an overhand right in 1FC. Then fights John Lineker at 145, goes the distance, and then has another featherweight bout on UAE Warriors, which he won. So he's back at 135 pounds here. Was already supposed to be in the UFC, actually. He was scheduled to fight Movsar Evloev back in the day. I feel like, relatively speaking, this is a way easier entry into the UFC for him. He also had a scrap fight with Movlid Haibulayev on PFL. He's had fights on ACB, 1FC, UAE Warriors, like we said. He was 3-3-1 and 14-0 outside of the promotion. And that's stiff competition that he's fighting in one. There's a massive gap in competition between him and Hellinger in this spot. He won a hard 3 rounds with John Lineker. He has 2 other decision losses in one, and they were both in 2016. He has a 94% finish rate, 16 out of 17 wins coming inside the distance, 9 knockouts, 7 submissions. He's never been finished. And Hellinger is a KO guy primarily. He has a pretty good chin. I mean, if you watch that Lineker fight, he got tagged good a couple times and was able to stay up. He's a former Sambo world champion. In the Lineker loss, he was able to hit a nice double on him to open the second round, ended up in a somewhat tight guillotine, got out, worked top position for about a minute and a half, and I just doubt that Ann Hellinger is going to provide that same resistance in this one. So I actually really like Gafurov here. I got 5 units on him at minus 225.
Yeah, that's interesting. The only thing I'll say here is like that fight that Gafurov had against John Lineker in 2019. I feel like that fight kind of laid out a blueprint of how to beat this guy. You got to keep the pressure on and kind of keep him on his toes, kind of just mentally exhaust him. We know, like you said, Gafurov kind of a smaller featherweight, right? And then he moved up to featherweight, so he's kind of at a disadvantage at featherweight, cutting down to 135 in this fight where he's going to be with a guy his size. I feel like Hellinger is smaller than him. So he's got a bit of a size advantage, I think, in this matchup. But honestly, I don't know. I haven't taken like the full scope of this, but don't you feel like, I mean, you've already made the bet, so I can't do the talk you off thing now, but you know how we just talked about Bellator, right? Like how could be a squash spot with Nujikwane. I just feel like, I don't know. I just feel like there's a chance here that there could be like a misstep. I don't know. I'm not as confident in him as you are. I've seen that some money has come in on the other side here. I don't know. I definitely will not bet the other side. I don't like that price on Gafurov. I definitely think he wins this fight more times than not, but I also feel like there's a slightly good chance that this fight goes the distance. What do you think about that?
I think there's definitely a chance, but
I see.
if we're up coming in here with a 94% finish rate and then Ann Hellinger with a 90% finish rate, I feel like if I had to pick a method, I think that Gafurov is probably going to submit him. That would be probably my.
Fight goes the distance. No, is at -170. So it would definitely be the contrarian play to think that this one goes the distance. Yeah, gun to my head. You asked me who wins this fight. I think obviously Gafurov gets it done. 6.5, 7 times out of 10, maybe. But I'm still 7 times out of 10. There's definitely value at -225, but I'm hesitant on this one. I got to go back and watch those fights on YouTube. I'll say this too. Like, you definitely hit the nail on the head in comparison of experience. One championship, apart from Rug, one championship are some of the highest level MMA fighters that are not in the UFC, right?
Yep,
like we've seen one of the best UFC champions go to one championship and get knocked out by
that hurt my heart so much,
by
man.
their bantamweight champions. So I mean, they're not in it. This isn't necessarily Bellator in comparison. So yeah, I don't know. This one, I definitely have like Canadian bias or something. I've definitely done more. Like, I've definitely been more exposed to Ann Hellinger than I have to Gafurov. So I definitely need to do like a little bit more digging on Gafurov. And I thought that I saw flaws in that fight against Lineker, but the biggest takeaway that I saw was there's no way that Ann Hellinger is going to be able to do what Lineker did, because it's just the root of this fight where, they have massive separation in fight experience and just competition. So yeah, basically I think I got to take the over. If this fight is lined at like over 1.5 at like -135 or better, I'll probably take the over, because I feel like he's not going to smash him as quick as people think. And I think that whenever you have like a bantamweight fight and the market expects so much that it's going to be finished early that it goes down from 2.5 rounds down to 1.5 rounds, a lot of the time I'll come in on that over, because it's definitely there's definitely some value. But it's so tough because we're not talking about the highest level. This is a regional MMA, Canadian regional MMA fighter that is fighting, a guy who was ranked in one championship. So yeah, you're probably on the right side. I'm just not as confident in it as you are.
Fair enough. And Hellinger definitely has a chance. I mean, when I was doing the tape on him, it definitely scared me a little bit, just the power that he has. Like, he looks like a really good athlete as well. I just don't think that he's going to be able to offer a ton of resistance in the grappling department.
Yeah, that's true too, because we've seen we saw say with Loic Radzhabov, right, against Alex Martinez in that second fight. Martinez looked good in the first fight, but once Loic Radzhabov was able to sharpen that grappling in the second fight, and I know that these dudes don't train with each other anymore, but they did used to train with each other. Kind of similar style, like Sambo. Yeah, it's hard to bet against these dudes, basically, especially, like I said, a low-level regional Canadian fighter who is definitely really good, but I definitely do not think he's UFC level whatsoever. But he probably has a slight chance. It would definitely be a miracle if he pulled this off. So yeah, you're probably on the right side with Gafurov. All right, so